Nobody beats Talking Joe, an international podcast.
Brand new.
Hey, we're talking brand new Joe. Hey, we're on a brand new show. Deep dive, blow by blow. Spotting Uzis and crossbow. Like a buzzbow or pogo. Got ninjas like Don Shadow. Comics are how I spend my dough. We're coming to you in stereo. It's time for Talking Joe. With Mark and Tim, here we go.
Brand new.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey, it's me, Mark, and welcome once again to Talking Joe, which, as you may or may not know, is the G.I. Joe Comics podcast. And today we are talking about G.I. Joe number 12. We're returning back to the Energon Universe. This came out just this Wednesday gone, 15th of October, 2025. But I will not be talking about this issue just by myself. As always, I'll be joined by my co-host. It's a real American Tim. It's Tim Finn.
Hello, Mark, and hello, listeners and viewers.
Fantastic. So, Tim, today we are talking about the latest issue of G.I. Joe from the Energon Universe. It's the final one of this latest little arc before we head into the Dreadnought Wars and fortnightly G.I. Joe. Are you ready? I don't know that I am.
I am not ready. So, folks, in April, Mark and I were enchanted and overwhelmed by 7 weeks in a row of G.I. Joe comics, because there was a regular issue of A Real American Hero, and then there were 5 silent mission specials, and then the next week I think we were back to a regular issue of A Real American Hero, and I'm forgetting there must have been an Energon Universe issue in there as well, and it was an embarrassment of riches. And we're going to get a version of that again when, for 3 months, we have A Real American Hero and then 2 issues per month of G.I. Joe in the Energon Universe, which means more live episodes. Maybe fortunately, these issues for the bi-weekly G.I. Joe will be drawn by Tom Reilly, who we've already spoken to. So unlike silent missions, there's no sort of immediate impetus to go talk to the new person who's writing and drawing G.I. Joe for the first time. So not any.
It does feel like we do need to get Josh and Tom back at some point and have a really good conversation with them. But as you say, when, what time?
Right. Both were at New York Comic Con. Mm-hmm. Both had tables in Artist Alley and were on the Energon Universe panel. And we're at the signing at Midtown Comics on Friday night.
We'll talk about that in just a second. At the time of recording, we are live. So if you want to be cool, like the cool kids, like Infinite Entertainment, you can join live and send your comments as we go. Where it's not breaking our flow incredibly, we'll definitely see all of the comments and share them if it's part of the thing that we're talking about on screen or sort of at the end of the show. So this issue just released is another standalone Night Force covert op mission. It's the first appearance of fan favorite Shooter. How can she join Night Force when she's imprisoned in Darklonia? Lady Jaye has a plan. So we will be talking about that today. But before we get into all of that, let's have a little bit of look at some of the news. So, Tim, you were at New York Comic Con with a bit of a saga around it. I think check out arealamericanbook.com to hear about that. So, sounds like Tim is having like flashbacks to all of the stress of getting into New York Comic Con, which was an event and a blog-worthy event. But significantly, you did catch up with a friend of the show, Andrea, Milana, and say hello. Tell us about that experience, Tim.
Friday morning or Saturday morning at New York Comic Con, there was a giant line to get into the convention, But very few of those people first thing went to Artist Alley. Artist Alley Saturday morning was not crowded. Now, maybe 1/5 or 1/6 of all the guests in Artist Alley hadn't shown up yet at 10 a.m. and presumably they'd get there at 10:30 or 11. But many of the people that I wanted to see in Artist Alley were there, and I didn't have to brave the crowds. And people were definitely braving the crowds upstairs in the main hall of the Javits Center where all the exhibitors were. So I said hello to Andrea and Milana, and he's been on the show twice, once very recently. And I hadn't planned on getting a drawing from him. I was thinking of bringing my convention sketchbook and having him draw in it, but my convention sketchbook is hiding in a box somewhere. And I also thought it's sort of heavy and it's one more thing, and I want to pack light. So I didn't bring it. And then by the time I was in front of his table, I thought, oh wait, I had Tom Reilly draw Duke for me on G.I. Joe #1 back in November a year ago when he signed at my store. Wouldn't it be fun to have Andrea Milana draw Cobra Commander on G.I. Joe 7? And then they could sort of be bookends. They're both facing to the right, so it's not a literal bookend. So Andrea Milana's agent got that video of me on his phone reacting when I went by later to pick it up. And what you miss is me gasping and laughing in sort of shocked awe, like a big, oh my gosh, belly laugh, shocked awe, chuckle in surprise, because it is stunning. It is stunning.
Really good. Look what he's done to that logo as well. That's going above and beyond.
Yes. So Milana used some white paint, both his and the person next to him, because he ran out, and he covered up 2.5 letters of the logo. So that Cobra Commander's hand blast is sort of happening in front of it. And then he sort of distressed some of the rest of the logo and sort of slightly redrew a bit of the G. So it looks like it's cracking into pieces. The basic idea was mine. Head sketch, bust, or full body. And I thought, let's do, half body. And I said, maybe he's holding his pistol in one hand and he's using his hand blaster in the other. And can you have the blast sort of go to the edge of the paper? Because I really like it when artists activate compositionally the top, bottom, or sides of that rectangle. And I'm perfectly happy for like a head in the middle of the page, in the middle of the cover, but it becomes more dynamic if something is touching an edge. And this is a thing that a teacher said to me in art school. And so in like tiny, like 3 little stick figure lines in his sketchbook, he said, "Oh, you mean like this?" And I said, "Yeah." And then I realized I was perhaps art directing this too much. You go to a convention and the guy who's drawn Spider-Man for 30 years, you ask him to draw Spider-Man for you and you don't say anything else. Or maybe you say, "Can you draw Electro or Mary Jane?" And if you say something like, "Well, can Spider-Man be holding a lunchbox, but also have his fingers out and then the webbing coming out of his other hand?" And sometimes that artist might think, "Oh, finally, some difference. I don't have to sort of draw the same thing over and over. It's gotten boring." But sometimes the artist might put up their hand and say, yeah, I'm going to draw something and you'll like it. And so I thought, "Oh, sorry, Andrea, I'm sort of over arts directing this for you." And I think he was happy to have some input, and it went back later, and it's really, really great. And I think I'm glad I didn't have it in my sketchbook, because then it would be inside a hardcover book on a bookshelf that I can't find. Whereas this will go in my G.I. Joe long box, right after the issue 7 that I, bought at my store.
Fantastic. Hi to the Canadian survivalist who's joining us, and hey to Ken at Toy Connections. Tim has just been a guest of Ken, and I believe that episode is going up soon, if it's not up already.
Folks, if hearing me talk about G.I. Joe comics once a week is not enough for you, consider this month a 5th opportunity, because I was on Ken's show, Toy Connections, and we talked about the Marvel run 1 through 55. We just riffed for, I think it was 2 hours.
And you also bumped into other former guest of ours, Danny, who was at New York Comic Con and had the exciting announcement at one of the DC panels that she will be joining Greg Rucka back on Batwoman, sort of, I guess, a sequel to his critically acclaimed Batwoman series from a good little while ago.
Yeah, Danny. So I got back to Artist Alley late in the day on Saturday after the sort of panels and lunch thing in the middle. And Danny was answering some questions from someone with a little camera and a microphone. It was like, what are your 5 favorite comics? What are you working on now? And I didn't want to bother them because she was doing an interview. So I looked in her 3 folders of original art, and there was stuff from these 2 most recent series that are not G.I. Joe, plus 5 pages, including the last page, and also the cover of her Jinx issue. And they were priced reasonably, let me say. And I did not buy any, but I did think about it. I think if it was 10 years ago, I would have definitely bought one of them or 2 of them. I'm sort of tempering my need to own a lot of arts these days, and I do have the issue, and we did interview her on the show, and that's pretty satisfying. But I said hello, and hello on behalf of Mark, and how great it was to have her on the show, and I just wanted to say to both Andrea and her in person, hello and thank you. And she was very excited, and she said she'd really liked doing the show, and she thanked us for having her on the show, and when I was saying this, I had missed that Batwoman announcement, which I think had happened the day before or earlier in the day. And there were so many panels going on. If I'm at home during a big convention and I'm on my computer, I might be refreshing one of the comic book news sites and getting those announcements, sort of an hour after they happen. If I'm at a convention, I am definitely walking around slowly and in a daze and stressed out trying to get everything done, and I'm missing everything that is happening in the other panels. And I did miss the Energon Universe panel, which started at 1:15 on Saturday. So I don't know what they said. I didn't get the cool thing they gave out free. I didn't make it to Walmart for was it a Jaye Lee cover, 750 copy giveaway, right? You folks, Mark sent me a picture of a Jaye Lee Snake Eyes cover.
That's right.
And said, hey, this was Friday night when I'd gotten to my hotel. Hey, can you try and get this tomorrow? And I thought, no, it's just too big. The space is too big, and I'm not going to have time. And maybe they've run out already. And you shared on the Talking Joe Facebook page someone from a different Facebook group who had managed to get all the freebie and buy all of the New York Comic Con G.I. Joe and G.I. Joe exclusive covers, and they posted a photo of all 6 or 8 of them. And I thought, now that person did it right.
But this is going to be on your blog post number 2. I think you did make it out to Cold Slither. So this could easily be a couple of hours on its own. So let's not get into it. But you were there, and I'm sure at an amazing time. So we'll talk about that another time, and people can see your blog post. But again, another thing that's going to need a bit of time on its own. You actually appeared at a panel, and at the Boom Studios panel again. Check out arealamericanbook.com for all of the details. But Tim, we'll talk about this in great depth in the future, I think. But give me the elevator pitch. What are we seeing here?
Many years ago, I got Larry Hama and Mark Bright back together to write and draw a 100-page superhero story. It's colored by Josh Burcham, who colored amazing Transformers comics for IDW, and then also he drew some. And it's lettered by Janice Chang, who lettered Transformers at Marvel in the 80s and continues to letter. And Mark Bright passed away a year and a half ago. Larry and I pitched this to Boom in January, and it's going to be 4 issues. The image we're looking at right now is penciled by Mark and inked and colored by Joe Quinones, who is a friend and lives very near me. And Quinones just finished a second Batman 89 movie miniseries. And the first issue should be out in February. And I'll say two more things. I've been working on this for many years. And Mark, I apologize for most of the time that I have been your co-host on this podcast. I have had this in progress in my back pocket. And a few times it's like, oh, Mark, I'm going to New York. You're going to try and see Larry Hama? Yes, I think we'll try and have coffee. Like, oh, you're going to ask him about G.I. Joe? Yes. It's like, we're also going to talk about this, and I can't tell you about this. But in fact, even last week when we did, a week and a half ago when we did an episode, the whole thing was just sitting on my printer right behind me.
Very good. So we'll definitely make sure that we get some time to properly talk about this as it comes available to order on these kind of things.
I should say the title out loud because I don't think I've said that in the last 2 minutes. It's called The Center Holds. Okay. Yeah,
and not The Center Folds, which is what I had in my head.
And not the center closes. Someone awesome on Facebook got it wrong, and one of the big comic book news websites got it wrong. And the day after the panel, I got to correct both of them, and both of them did correct it. So, so we've already had that loop.
So at NYCC, there was also a cool Midtown Comics Times Square signing from a lot of the big Energon Universe creators: Joshua Williamson, George Corona, Tom Reilly, Ben Abernethy. Can see what Ben Abernethy looks like now as well. Andre Bresson, Andrea Milana, and Connor Hughes. So across Transformers, G.I. Joe, and Void Rivals. That was followed up with the NYCC panel, Transformers and G.I. Joe, A New Era for the Energon Universe. And at the panel, they did give out freebie comics, but I don't think it was an exclusive for NYCC. I believe they were reusing previous comics. So one of the Facebook group members shared what they received, which was the same Energon Universe Ashcan edition that was given out in SDCC San Diego. So I don't think there was a specific brand new comic particularly for this panel alone, but there was lots of cool news, which I will give a very quick recap of. So they looked ahead across G.I. Joe 13 through to 19, essentially. An interesting reveal was for G.I. Joe 15, which revealed Road Pig for the first time joining the Energon universe. Very cool. And there he is, G.I. Joe Road Pig. Then there was also the look forward to G.I. Joe issue 18, which eagle-eyed viewers will have noticed is coming to us from artist Marco Fodera. So the same artist who brought us issue number 12, the one that we're going to be talking about today, is returning for issue number 18. So he's not gone for long. And the exciting thing about this particular issue is that it features the appearance of Roadblock joining the Energon universe. So two significant roads converging in the Energon universe. They also looked ahead to issue number 19 with this exciting headbutt cover. Don't headbutt an Autobot, guys. It's not going to do your noggin any good. And a promise that Matt Tracker will be returning to the G.I. Joe book for issue number 19.
If you look at the top of this covered issue 19, the artist is credited as Andrea Milana, and the colorist is Lee Loughridge. So, folks, I'm getting my wish, which is consistency. And if one amazing artist can't draw this book every month ongoing, but does 5 or 6 issues, and then someone else shows up and does 4 or 5 or 6 issues, could you get that first artist to come back for the third arc? Yes. Could you get that second artist to come back for seemingly the beginning of the fourth arc? Seemingly.
And thematically, it's sounding fantastic because obviously Andrea Milana did the arc, which has been focusing on this clutch-hound relationship, and here we're seeing them being another focus for this issue, and he's the artist who's going to be featuring them once more. So, yep. And hello once again, Matt Tracker, again drawn by Andrea Milana. Last time in the Energon Universe Free Comic Book Day special. I was just wondering if you're
working overtime.
Right. Okay. You just wanted to burst into song. I wasn't too sure what was going on there.
Just needed a gap in your.
Right. So what else has been going on around the Energon universe over the course of the last month?
All around the skybound world, are you looking for some G.I. Joe? There's Autobots and Decepticons and creatures from the sacred ring. All we need is Energon, sweet Energon. There'll be Energon everywhere. There'll be robots swinging, aliens killing, and Decepticons in the streets. Yeah!
Yes, indeed. And just in the course of the last month, the second G.I. Joe hardcover, codenamed G.I. Joe Volume 2, featuring Scarlet or Destro on the front cover, came out. So this photo, I think, is from X, Pancho on X, is a nice little illustration that if you were collecting all of these books and laid them out as to what it would look like. A nice little layout of books there. This month, we've seen Void Rivals, issue number 23, and a lot of the cosmic grand storyline is sort of coming to a head in terms of that grand sweep of story. But in terms of our G.I. Joe focus, excitingly, the Pythona and Cobra La storyline is also progressing there, that they're at Quintessa and encountering robots, transforming robots, if you could believe. So this is Wheelie that they have bumped into, who's also been one of these characters that has been on the outskirts of the Void Rivals stories. So, Tim, did you want to add something in?
I was just counting. I realized that Wheelie's first two lines in Transformers the movie are the beginning of a haiku. Friend, find, look behind. That's 5 syllables. Wheelie, say, find friends today. That's 7 syllables. But then the next line. Anyway, Void Rivals is great. I liked it the first year, and I thought, sort of jokingly, well, the only way I'd love this book is it becomes the second Transformers book. And it has, to a degree. But also with this, G.I. Joe, the movie character in Pythona and some Cobra La characters. It's funny because there's no spine of the Energon universe. There's no comic every month that's called Energon Universe, where the main stuff is happening. And then Void Rivals is what's out there, and G.I. Joe is only for G.I. Joe fans, and Transformers is some big action. The Energon Universe really is 3 equal poles moving along every month. And there are places where they're starting to overlap, but they have not literally crossed over. And Void Rivals is the one that has the biggest mix because it has the Sacred Ring characters, it has Transformers, and it has G.I. Joe characters. And because it's not G.I. Joe, and I'm not going to podcast about it, because it's not Transformers, and I am almost as big a Transformers fan as I am a G.I. Joe fan, because Void Rivals has only been around for 2 years, every time an issue comes out, I can breathe a sigh of relief. If it's a good issue, great. And if it's not, well, it's not my favorite book. It doesn't have to be my favorite book. I'm not talking about it with Mark for 2 hours in a couple of days. And yet every month I'm just tickled by Void Rivals, which is sort of the best kind of, big action, character work, surprises, and cliffhangers from Kirkman that I get from other things he's written, from The Walking Dead, from Firepower. I'm sure everyone else gets from Invincible, which I have not read much of. So folks, if you're not reading Void Rivals, do.
Mm-hmm. Pythona, again, featuring on a future cover revealed at the New York Comic Con panel. If you want to see all of the covers that were revealed, NYCC, head on over to the Talking Joe Facebook group, where we have shared those and a bit more of the detail of exactly what was discussed at the panel. Moving on to Transformers. Transformers issue 25 also came out this month. It is a brand new era with Robert Kirkman and Dan Mora on art. Although, significantly, there's this lovely little bridge, which is Kirkman writing, but Jorge Corona, the previous artist, it does the first little sequence featuring Megatron at the beginning of the book, which I thought was just this lovely continuation of overlap between the previous arc and into this new one from Kirkman. And it's just showing that intent. This isn't brand new, all different. It is a continuation of what has been there before.
This is also a sort of an editorial decision that I really appreciate. It used to be that comic books, when they hit an anniversary issue 25 or 100, oftentimes that was a new artist. But oftentimes that issue was the ending of a big story. And it was sort of, as a reader, it might be disruptive if you've been reading this, 5-parter and you get to the big anniversary issue and the artist that you've been familiar with for a while is now gone and has moved on. And a handful of times in the last, 10, 15, 20 years in comics, some smart editor has taken the advantage of a double-sized or oversized anniversary issue, in this case a 25, and had it split between the artist who's leaving and the artist who's coming, which is such a gift for the readers because it's such a nice transition. And then, as Mark referred to, it can thematically sort of tie up the previous story while also switching over to the new story.
And this issue was quite a big one for G.I. Joe crossover, and as well as just general excitement. So if, spoilers, if you've not yet read Transformers 25 and want to keep it a secret, we see the return.
Put your fingers in your headphones, folks, for the next 90 seconds.
We see the return of this, we see a character in this sort of general's uniform and sunglasses, who I initially thought, is that General Flagg? He seems very different. The last time we saw General Flagg, he seemed like a bit of a stern, angry, torture-y kind of guy, because he was essentially torturing Ultra Magnus. And here he sort of put me in mind of Lyle Langley, the schmoozing character from Simpsons, the monorail episode. And he's sort of schmoozing Optimus Prime. And just being very charming and trying to help him out.
I think the difference is that when this character has an alien robot as a prisoner and needs information from him, he's going to put the screws to him. And when this character was just saved by a bunch of these alien robots, and he's differentiating now between the good guys and the bad guys, he can be kind and charming. There's no reason to start yelling at Optimus Prime and threaten war and to try and capture him. A general would be a politician, not literally, but would be able to have different, modes and to schmooze when need be.
Down here, the little guy with the big energy. So he's schmoozing Optimus, and he takes him to this mysterious base with helicopters and jets, and what seems to be a giant elevator shaft to a base underground, which seems like a familiar sort of G.I. Joe concept.
And he says, "Welcome to Shadow Watch." And so this place or this team or this initiative has a name, but that does not ring a bell for me in my G.I. Joe, Transformers, Hasbro sort of history.
And we find out that he's had a couple of Transformers, Autobots specifically, in his care for some time, that they have been sort of dissecting and studying. and an even bigger reveal that sort of the MacGuffin of the Energon, which has been sort of driving so much of the story, that they're running low on Energon, they don't have energy to, restore themselves and their fallen, comrades, etc. And there seems to be an almost unlimited stockpile of Energon here available, which is sort of really changing this dynamic for the Autobots if they've got access to it. And then we just have this wild page turn, which is that the person heading up Shadow Watch is Miles Mayhem.
Fighting crime! Fighting crime! Fighting crime! The Mask cartoon, folks, I think there's 65 episodes, and it ran in 85 and 86. And my brother and I only watched it a little bit because I think it was on the other channel that ran syndicated cartoons while G.I. Joe or Transformers was on. So it was of secondary importance to us, and we would watch it sometimes when, I guess, G.I. Joe or Transformers was one we'd already seen. And then I think in its second or third year, did it move to the USA Network? Did it move to cable? I can't remember. But Mark, I don't have a huge relationship with Mask. My brother and I, between the two of us, had 3 of the vehicles, which came with some figures. And then I had the 2-pack with the kid and the robot. Was it T-Bow? And, but, we didn't read the comic and we didn't watch the show much. I watch it now sometimes and it's fun, but it's definitely like a lesser G.I. Joe. Mark, did you have a relationship with Mask?
Not a big one. I had a couple of the toys, but I was big into G.I. Joe, and they just seemed, they were a different scale, and they didn't have the same level of articulation, so they seemed just a little bit lesser, although so quite cool. And they did show the cartoon in the UK, so I did see a good number of episodes, and I think there was a lot of promotion, and the toys and stuff were in the shops and they look cool, but yeah, so that sort of general awareness, but not a kind of a big personal connection. But yeah, it was very, actually seeing the page turn and the introduction of Miles Mayhem was a real gasp, like, wow.
Thank you for teeing that up, because I felt the same way. And this comes just let's see, it's October now. It was only in May that we had the surprise of Matt Tracker in the Free Comic Book Day comic in the Energon Universe special. And so I had to know that more was coming, but Skybound is so good at sort of keeping their reveals. And this comes, 5 years after, maybe 6 years after IDW ran a Mask comic book for, 5 issues, 10 issues, right, between the first series and then a couple specials around First Strike, in that combined, Revolution universe, Hasbro-verse. And because G.I. Joe kept showing up in those Mask comic books, I read several of them. And so it's not like, we haven't had any Mask in the last 30 years. We've had some Mask. And still, I think this page turn is... I figured something was going to happen at the end of this issue that would change the status quo for the Autobots or for the sort of overall Energon universe relationships. And the fact that it's General Hawk, I thought it was going to be a G.I. Joe thing. I didn't know we had a guest, says an off-panel character on the final panel before the page turn reveal. And I thought, okay, well, that's a round word balloon. That's a human. That's not a square word balloon. So this is not going to be an Autobot or Decepticon. And I turned the page, and as you did, I sort of gasped and chuckled. It also helps that Dan Mora is such a superb comic book artist. His layouts are very exciting. His drawings are all just sharp. Everyone looks great and heroic and exciting and sexy and dynamic. And he's got the scale down of, humans versus Transformers. He can do tech and backgrounds. I think most or all of his backgrounds are like 3D models, which he then exports. And I'm totally fine with that if it means he can draw 2 or 2.5 comics every month, tugging my collar. But Dan Mora's facial expressions and acting, his characters have such verve. And his work is so modern and exciting. And it's no coincidence that DC put him on its top 2 books for the last year, or 2 of its top, 2 or 3 or 4 books for the last year. So it's a real coup. I think I said this when the announcement happened and we talked about it. It's a real coup that he's drawing Transformers, and Kirkman mentions how excited he is in the letters page by this collaboration.
Yeah, he says that he's been trying to work with Dan Mora for some time, and he wasn't 100% sure if he would actually be the writer for Transformers himself because of everything else going on. But, having Dan Mora was the deciding factor, almost like I can't have him joining the book and not be writing it myself. Although, interestingly, I think it's in the back of issue number 25, Kirkman shares his plot overview for the issue number 1, and it's interesting quite how similar the execution of that issue is from Daniel Warren Johnson to that high level view that Robert Kirkman had. So it sort of emphasizes the level of involvement that he had in setting this thing going.
I'll say 2 more quick things. One, Dan Mora's design for Miles Mayhem here is either just his original costume, or it has the slightest bit of added stuff, like maybe those 2 stripes on his right chest. And everyone could have certainly gotten away with sort of beefing up the textures and the pouches as if this was going to be a classified action figure with more details and bits. And yet, to my memory, this is just the 1980s Miles Mayhem design. So I appreciate that. And 2, I think Skybound absolutely could make a Mask comic book. And I think there could be a new movie or a TV show. I also think for a good long while, it makes a lot of sense to just keep this brand in this space between G.I. Joe and Transformers, since that's the math equation, right? Action figures plus action vehicles. And I would not want to see Skybound have a 4th book that's pretty good and then only runs 12 issues, because actually there aren't enough people who want a monthly Mask comic and can shell out $4 for it. So for now, the dynamic keeps the Energon universe evolving, and in terms of not getting too big too fast, not demanding too much of readers and their wallets, and what this means now is that instead of there being a Mask issue number 1 in 3 months, and it's awesome, wait, I didn't ask for that. Every couple of issues, I think a Mask character might show up, and we'll be tickled when it happens because they're going to dole it out slowly, or maybe not very much. Maybe it really is just, Tracker and Mayhem and 1 other character.
And then potentially, if a Mask book does launch, we'll have built up that excitement and anticipation to want it, rather than maybe not wanting it or begrudgingly buying it, just so you get the whole universe. In the back of the book, we do have it confirmed that General is General Flag, because he is not named actually in the story itself. So that's interesting. And then we also have this end bit of the book, which has kind of got this flashback. It's Thundercracker who has had this harrowing experience where he seems to have somehow been teleported into Cobra and faced Globulus. So doubtless we'll get a bit more as to understanding as to what has gone on there, and that story building out. So that is all of the lowdown on the Energon universe, and we can dig on into G.I. Joe issue number 12 proper. And as always, we do that by kicking off and looking at the creative team, actually. The creative team, the people what brought us this book were writer Joshua Williamson, artist Marco Fodera, colorist Lee Loughridge, letterer Russ Wooton, editor Ben Abernethy, publication design Andres Juarez, and production Ashby Florence. Now let's have a look at those things, what they stick on the front of the books.
Let's have a look at the covers in the gallery.
Cover A of G.I. Joe 12 is drawn and colored by Tom Reilly. This is a really striking image. It's centered and symmetrical. In the foreground is Shooter. We see her from sort of mid-thigh up. Her head is bowed, so her face is in shadow. Her fists are up, and she's holding, but also bound by, on each side, 3 long ammo belts. So they wrap around her wrists. So they're acting like shackles, like chains. Behind her, with a color hold, so the background is not black but blue, and all the outlines of Lady Jaye, Flint, and Beachhead, plus the sort of black inking on Flint's costume, are blue. Are those 3 other members that we know are a part of Night Force. They're not literally standing behind her. They are sort of in a compositional sort of spectral sense behind her. But Flint is looking at us or at Shooter. His arms are crossed. His eyebrow is cocked. He's got a small smirk. Beachhead has his eyebrow cocked. He's looking at us in a bit of a sly way. Lady Jaye has her fists at the ready, and she's also looking out. And similarly, she's got an eyebrow up. This is a really great cover, and I'm struck by just how great every bullet on these 6 bullet belts look. And I appreciate either that Tom Reilly drew each of them individually, or in copying and pasting some of them, slightly nudged a few of them, with ink or in the computer so that it doesn't read as like copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. This is a cover which has some mystery to it. And considering that for a lot of people, they have never met Shooter, right? Who basically has shown up in, help me out, Mark. Is she on the last page of the previous issue where someone says, we got to go get Shooter?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think they have like a photo of her on the desk or something. Yeah.
Okay, and she's not on any other covers in the Energon universe, and she's in like 2, maybe all 3 issues of G.I. Joe Declassified, this miniseries from Devil's Due from, 2005, 2006? But she's not on those covers, right? Because she's sort of this lost character, right? She had an action figure that like only hardcore fans know about from 10 years ago. And okay, now you've put on screen the cover of...
Yeah, so I put on the Collectors Club, which is one of her very few covers, where they ask who is Jodie Shooter Craig. So the backstory is the mystery of Shooter appearing on this console covered with a face covered by a hand. That the letterer or somebody had snuck into the pages of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero issue #1. Not in the script, not necessarily a character that they had intended to build out or do anything with at all. And so they created many years on in the pages of G.I. Joe Declassified from Devil's Due. In 2005, they actually created a story around her in this G.I. Joe Declassified book, fleshing her out as Jodie Craig, the mysterious shooter who is behind the scenes of the initial G.I. Joe missions and meets her end in those books. And potentially that was the name came from a real life school friend of Larry Hama, Jodie Craig. Class of 67 art design.
We should just put these 2 ideas together. She's a sniper. Her code name is Shooter. So that it's pretty direct.
And so there was a release in 2016 as part of the 50th anniversary line. So the more modern 4-inch designs, a 3-pack, which included a Shooter figure. And then more recently, I think it was last year, so that would have been 2024, there was a classified series release in 6-inch of Jodie Shooter Craig, part of, funnily enough, the Night Force sub-team as well. So in a kind of a black uniform, not a million miles away from the way she appears in this particular issue. Finally we get a redesigned version by Tom Reilly, who's doing a lot of the design work for the characters, even sometimes if he's not the person drawing them himself. So he drew the design for Shooter with the typical kind of looking at her hand kind of view with a suggested specialized weapon, the kind of the black turtleneck kind of top, and green army pants.
I just want to put a fine point on this. Shooter starts in 1982 as a joke, right? That the letterer or someone, right? You have this console where you see all the Joes, their headshots with their names under it. And the way that Herb Trimpe, the penciler of this issue, draws it, that this sort of there are more headshots, there are more like profiles, there are more screens than there are Joes. And since there's this additional one where you have to put a name and someone's hand in front of it, it is covering the face, but isn't covering the name. I think it's Rick Barker, but maybe we could ask him. We may not ever know. Hawk, Zap, Grand Slam, Joe. Editor-in-chief Jim Shooter, right? Just puts Jim Shooter. And you can't tell who it is because of that hand that's in the way. Although I have always suspected it is a black-haired Caucasian man, and no one ever talked about this in the entire Marvel run. And then a few years into the Devil's Due run, there's this idea to tell this expanded story of G.I. Joe in 1981, 1982, and to make this, it's not even an inside joke, it's just like a little throwaway gag into a fully fledged character. And it's also nice because the original Joe team is all men except for one woman, and there's some diversity, but it's still a lot of white people. And so this makes the team a little more diverse. And but then it's also sad, and explains why maybe no one ever talked about this character, because she's not meant to be known and she didn't make it out of the mission. So for a character who's had so few appearances and so few action figures, there's this sort of long-term kind of pathos built up around her, so that when now she shows up in the Energon universe, even though we barely know her, we're already, hardcore fans are sort of primed, and Joshua Williamson can not right a wrong, but sort of make something really new out of something that's always been there and never been there, which is a really funny, eventually Williamson's going to make Dr. Mindbender in the Energon universe. And that's going to be very much like the one that we know from the cartoon or the Larry Hama comic, or not. With Shooter, there's so little to sort of react to. And as Mark pointed out, that classified figure that came out, 2 years ago, is Night Force. And so, why not have her join Night Force? She's already sort of the Joe we never knew. So let's put her in this current Joe team that they don't know about.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Has Greg Augustine asks, has Hammer ever revealed when he learned of the Shooter in-joke? I assume that he found about it pretty much immediately, or maybe on the publication of issue number 1. And I think has expressed his annoyance that, I didn't put that in the script kind of thing. And well, not been particularly happy about it at the time, but probably subsequently it sort of, provided this fuel where people have kept on coming back and asking him about it year after year. Who is that original Shooter? And it's sort of given the fuel to come up with an idea actually as to explain it. And to Barking Fridge's sort of question here, do you think Trimpe knew that there would be more figures in 82 since the action figures are planned years in advance? Is it possible that creators did it because they had no idea G.I. Joe would excel? And I think there's a bit of that in there, that it was a brand new thing. They had no idea how big a success it would be and if it would be going on all of these future years. So by putting in a little funny joke like that of here's an extra character on the end of the console readouts, they didn't necessarily appreciate the weight, the cumulative weight that would have from being what in retrospect is an iconic issue, Whereas at the time, it's, just I guess another job. Let's put in that little joke there. No one will notice or care.
I think there's a rule in lettering in comics that letterers cannot change the script. If something seems like it's wrong or like a typo or an error, I think letterers have to check with the editor or the writer. And Marvel in the 60s and 70s and 80s was using the momentum of this mythology that Stan Lee had built up about the bullpen, right? That everyone came to work at the bullpen. They did not, in Manhattan. And we're all in this together. And it's kind of crazy here, and like Jazzy Johnny Ramita's drawn over there. And Jack the King Kirby's over here. And he and I have a story session. And, and that's not what it was. But the Marvel creators referred to themselves, whether it's like Stan and Jack showing up in an issue of Fantastic Four, or the monthly Marvel Age comic book, which was a magazine, a like newsletter, but as a format, it was a comic book. And it was just a catalog of everything that Marvel would be publishing that month, with some articles and interviews with the editors. And it was just a way to promote Marvel. And you learn, between that and the bullpen bulletins page, sort of who had a kid or how the Marvel baseball team was doing, or if one editor or assistant editor was moving to a different office, or maybe was leaving Marvel, or occasionally someone had passed away and there'd be a little bit of a memorial. And so it is in that spirit that I think a Rick Parker or someone might add this joke, because, there are all those credits in Marvel Comics where instead of like writer Larry Hama, penciler Herb Trimpe, inker, colorist, it's like Staff Sergeant Larry Hama, pilot Herb Trimpe, and then you get to the editor and the editor-in-chief, and it's like mess hall janitorial service, like Jim Shooter, right? And so it is in all of that spirit that Rick Parker or someone, did Rick Parker letter the first issue? Is it Jim Novak? I forget. Anyway, the letterer, it's like, well, just add one more name, right? So there's a very long way of saying little joke that was never meant to be anything.
Cover B.
Cover B is drawn and colored by Andrea Milana. Here we see Shooter up in a tree wearing that sort of hoodie smock from the Tom Reilly design. This cover is all green and sort of beige in the foreground. There is some dappled light hitting Shooter from above. And then in the distant background, there's sort of a yellow-orange and silhouettes of sort of other trees and vines. She's aiming her sniper rifle diagonally down. There's a lot of cool mood to this cover. And it's fun that the A and B cover this time around are so different, because we've had in the Tom Reilly, Andrea Milana run, some of the covers have been kind of more similar. Cover C is the 1 in 10 variant. This is drawn by Alan Quah. This is the 6th of 6 connecting covers where we're looking down at a desk or a table, and we see photographs of each character who's primarily featured in this issue, plus some other stuff. In this case, a photo of Shooter in costume, a photo of just her head, a pencil, a grenade, some bullets, a little bit of a map. And I do like this cover. I do think Shooter's face is a little sort of nondescript here, but it's still a cool drawing.
Alan Quah shared his rough for these 6 covers on his Facebook page, so that was quite fun to see that that early layout, and actually how closely he's stuck to that in terms of the execution of the final set of 6.
And this layout is a digital drawing in with a stylus. This is in Photoshop or Clips Studio Pro or something. Cover D, welcome back Steve Epting, who hasn't done one of these cool variants for the Energon Universe in maybe a year. Not sure if this was done way back when and held until now, or done more recently. But here is Flint, and he's running toward us. He's carrying his shotgun. I think technically his pants are green camo, but they sort of end up looking more black and white. And so not that these Night Force characters are wearing like black and dark gray versions of their regular costumes, but to the extent that the words Night Force to me say costume variation, like action figure with new colors, I look at this and I think, oh yeah, Flint in his all black look. But Epting is one of these artists who, I never thought he would draw G.I. Joe covers, and now that he's done a few, I just want more. And then that's the 1 in 25.
I think it might be the 5th cover that he did. Duke, Cobra Commander, Baroness, and Scarlet prior to this.
Okay, thank you. Cover E is the 1 in 50. This is penciled by David Finch, inked by Sandra Hope, and colored by Adriano Lucas. I think this is the first. Is this the first David Finch cover for Skybound that has not been colored by Dave McCaig in a long time? Anyway, this is really sharp. Here's Night Force, Lady Jaye, Shooter, Beachhead, and Flint. They're standing on some rubble. Flint is crouching in the front, but it's sort of the like cool pose, for the photo, like after the fact. Like this is not during the battle. Mark, I can't quite tell what it is they're standing on. What do you see? It's metal, but it looks a little tech,
like a metal and some tech, and it's sort of greebly. It's who knows? David Finch might not even know what it is that he's drawn here.
Okay,
but it's a giant futuristic lamppost.
It looks sort of brownish, tannish, not quite rusted. There's a little bit of like a yellow, like circular screen or like portal window on it. So it doesn't say to me Cybertronian. I think it's just meant to look cool. But it also doesn't really to me say like Cobra or Destro or US military. There's a nice rim light on all the characters. There's some orange on the top right of Flint and Shooter and Lady Jaye. And then Greg Augustin says it's like Night Force is on Tatooine. And then there's sort of a yellow rim light on Beachhead's back. What I like about this cover, one of the things I like about this cover is that the color that is Shooter's skin is definitely brown and not in any way similar to the sort of peach Caucasian that we see on Lady Jaye and Flint. And there are some colorists who I think, I don't know if it's how their monitors are calibrated or if they're thinking that certain browns might print very dark. But I find sometimes color artists in comics color black people like sort of very tan white people. And that is not the case here. But it's a cool drawing. And man, you get the sense that this rifle that Shooter has is gigantic. It's like, what is she, auditioning to be a saw viper?
Okay, we have only got one retailer variant for this particular issue, and it is this one from 616 Comics, and it's Chameleon, which means that I am contractually obligated to hit this button.
Covers of Chameleon. They're out each month. Collecting would be easy if your books were less frequent. She's red, black, and blonde. Red, black, and blonde.
I think did you make a reference to this in a previous episode about the sort of angle of her head?
Yeah, this is a special head-on backwards variant, which is a new series being released. This is the third. This is from 616 Comics. It can be found on their website and app, the616comics.com. It's the third G.I. Joe cover set in this run from Jamie Tyndall, following Baroness and Covergirl, and it does feature her head at a slightly strange angle as she's sort of looking a little bit over her shoulder, very backwards, and also fairly prominently featuring her boobs and her butt on this one, which led to some fun on the Facebook group suggesting a song that could accompany this particular this particular cover, which I went ahead and recorded, Tim. So this particular cover is getting double jingles.
Turn your head. Every now and then I get a little bit bored with all the cheesecake coming around. Turn your head. Every now and then I get a little bit tired of seeing all the boobs and the ribs. Turn your head. Every now and then I get a little bit nervous, cause I have to wonder why. Turn your head. Every now and then I get a little bit angry seeing an ass and a Turn your head real wise. Every now and then I fall apart. Turn your head real wise. Will she be able to smell her own farts? And I see them on the sights. Head backwards on my screen, and I wonder if they might come with a jar of Vaseline, and they'll only be making some more, cause they sell like hotcakes. These retail events push it to the line. Every month we see more every time. Every time. Her boobs are in your face, her butt is too. We're living in a time where both bits need to face you. Head backwards blind. Her head's on backwards alright. Her head's on backwards alright. Once upon a time I was collecting for love. Now I'm only getting duff arts. There's nothing I can do. Totally tits and some arse.
Wow. 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 That was great, Mark. So much work, so many lyrics. I completely missed the fun that people were having, I guess, online or on the Facebook group when this was first revealed. Someone in comics used this term once, 20 years ago, shiny girl. This person said, I'm not really interested in shiny girl art. And that's what this is, like the very, very slim, taut, arched back, accentuating butt and breasts, and whether it's like very little costume like Fathom or Witchblade, or a lot of costume like Chameleon here, like this is like a photograph of a model. This is not a American or this is not an American soldier or an international terrorist. This is as an image, it's very exciting, but if you actually think about, like, would this character stand this way? No, they would not.
Which actually sort of think back to the cleverness of Tom Reilly's design here, that as Greg pointed out, you've got a single knee pad there, and for a sniper that makes a lot of sense, that you've got this visual element, which also is making sense as a storytelling part, where typically she's going to be kneeling on her dominant knee, her other knee is going to be up in the air, and isn't going to need a knee pad. So yeah, for that sniping kneeling position, absolutely, just stick one knee pad on.
There's that thing. There's that internet meme. What's it called? The Hawkeye Initiative, where some fans drew Marvel's Hawkeye, but taking the pose of some like sexy women superheroes to sort of demonstrate how absurd some of these poses were. And it's pretty effective, right? Like if you drew Beachhead like Chameleon in that pose, you would think, oh, well, a man would never take that pose. And then by extension, you might think, oh, well, a woman would never take that pose either. Should we talk about the comic?
Yeah, let's get into what happened in this issue with a plot breakdown.
Plot breakdown.
In Darklonia, the G.I. Joe Night Force team of Beachhead, Lady Jaye, and Flint are on a mission to rescue Jodie Craig, aka Shooter, who has been imprisoned in the Grenadier Labour camp. Imprisoned by Darklon, who is demanding that she assassinate someone for him. She refuses and is beaten by a fellow prisoner. the gigantic killer, Ivana. Shooter is able to pick the lock of her cell and overhears Ivana plotting to kill her before she then encounters Beachhead. He's there to rescue her, but she wants to complete her mission. They do escape through the woods, but not before Shooter pulls off an impossible shot, aiming from the back of the Joe's Jeep and sniping Ivana through her cell window. Meanwhile, back at Cobra headquarters, Major Blood has been recruited to Cobra and given new bionic eyes. Destro begins to plot as to how he will remove Cobra Commander from power, a plan that may involve the Dreadnoks. Tim.
I have a couple top-down observations of this issue. One, this is art by Marco Fodera, who we have not met before in Energon Universe comics, any G.I. Joe comics, or Skybound. Fodera is Italian, and his work to me, I did just a tiny bit of Googling about him before this episode, and he's drawn a lot of comics for the Italian comics market and very few for the American comics market. And the ones that he did, I have not seen. And I don't know a lot about the Italian comics market. But as I look through this issue, I think this might be coincidental. I don't think Fodera is doing this on purpose. But when I look at the eyes and some of the faces of these characters, I'm reminded of the artist Cliff Chang.
Huh.
But in terms of a style, to use your word, Mark, this is sympathetic to Tom Reilly's look in the Duke miniseries in the first arc of this. It doesn't necessarily look like Andrea Milana's, but it doesn't, it doesn't not. But I guess it does not. But it for a quote fill-in issue, it does feel like it's of a piece with sort of how this book looks, and all the storytelling is great, and the characters all look great. So that's my one thing. So different artists, and it looks good. Two, this is a self-contained issue for the most part, right? Page 1 is a bookend, and the final 4, the final 4 pages are a bookend, and the final 4 pages move the overall story forward. The first page is just a way to sort of connect this to the G.I. Joe team that we've been following, but it doesn't really push the story forward. But it is the middle 16 pages that are this self-contained issue. And so the way that the letters page, I don't remember if it was Ben Abernethy or Joshua Williamson, but a few months ago, I think when we got to issue 7, they said, yeah, we're doing some of these self-contained issues that will read like self-contained issues, but will also connect to the larger story. And that's absolutely what is happening here. My third sort of overall point is that if she's in prison, why didn't they take her belt and her gloves and her her strap? Is it a bandolier if it doesn't have any bullets on it? Mm-hmm. They didn't give her a prison uniform. And there is someone else in this prison who's wearing a prison uniform. So I want to see her in her G.I. Joe costume. I don't want to see G.I. Joe characters in their civvies or in prison costumes or covered up in Arctic coats. I want to see them. I want to see Quick Kick near a volcano, in space, and in the Arctic, shirtless, because that's just what Quick Kick looks like. But logically, I did wonder about that. And then number 4, I forget. So, Mark, what about you?
Yeah, I really enjoyed this issue. I think Marco Fodera's got a different style to what we've seen from Reilly and Milana, but sort of it doesn't feel like a sort of a jarring shift. It sort of fits very nicely within the overall look, and I really like that comparison to Cliff Chang, and I think that's emphasized as well through some of the color holds that the colorist is employing in this issue as well, which is sort of when I think of his art, and particularly the work on Paper Girls, that's one of the things that puts me in mind. But I hadn't seen that until you pointed that out. So I was trying to think what does his style best remind me of? Because normally I sort of jump on something pretty pretty quick, but I couldn't quite think what it was. So it was interesting to hear that. But yeah, it's sort of a really interesting thing about the issue was the extent to which it wasn't just the one shot and the one and done. It does have those bookends, sort of the wider G.I. Joe story of what's going on with Duke, and sort of setting up the story to come in there, and sort of, I guess, addressing the elephant in the room about, you know, all of this other Transformers-y stuff that is happening out there in the world. And well, maybe we'll touch on that in a second. And then the speed on the delivery around the conclusion to not just the Major Blood point, but also the element with, you know, Destro had previously walked in. He'd saw these giant tanks with these, you know, freaky looking bodies being experimented in there. And he said that he'd find a volunteer. Major Blood, you know, had his eyes gouged out and left blind in the tunnels of Paris. And I kind of assumed that, you know, we'd be seeing some sort of the pacing that we're used to seeing from the way that Harmer tells a story, which is that we might not see a character or plot kind of again for potentially ever, or, you know, 50 issues or however long it is. I definitely wasn't expecting the Major Blood eye situation and the sort of the body volunteer that Destro had said that he'd help with. I didn't expect to see that being followed up in the next issue. So that was quite exciting to see that sort of my normal expectations were kind of, you know, were thwarted in that kind of way. And he's getting, and as well, Blood isn't just getting the single eye patch, he's getting double cybernetic eyes, which is, again, it's not playing into just a level of comfort of what we're used to seeing. But it's part of like those New York Comic Con conversations. They were sort of hinted that basically Josh Williamson has plotted out to around about issue 50 already. So I think there's a sense of, let's not dilly-dally. There's all of these characters, there's all of this story that I want to get through, so I'm not going to hold anything back. It's going to be, you know, every issue is going to be hitting you with both barrels to some degree.
I made this comparison before, but it reminds me of what Kevin Feige was saying about the Marvel Cinematic Universe 10 years ago, that sort of, if you have a good idea, he's talking about the screenwriters and the directors of these movies. If you have a good idea, don't save it for the sequel. That big things happened in, you know, the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie and the second one and the first, you know, Captain America movie and the second one. You know, if you told me that the Marvel Cinematic Universe was going to introduce the Winter Soldier, I would have guessed it would be 5 or 10 movies later, not the sequel, right? And that's, I see what's sort of happening here, that Williamson has so many characters and maybe versions of characters and factions, and, you know, 20 pages, not 22. This is not the Marvel run or the Devil's Due run. And just big things are happening every month. I mean, remember what happened on the last page of G.I. Joe issue number 1? You know, a major character died, and we were really surprised, and we were so surprised by it. We thought, well, maybe he's okay somehow, right? It's like, no. This is no.
Look who's in the comments, Tim, Marco Fodera. I remember that name from somewhere. He says, good call. I thought about the suits in the snow for this episode. So all of those G.I. Joe's characters with their, you know, their Arctic overcoats and so on. Iconic.
I'll slightly adjust that statement. I think in G.I. Joe, the movie, in the Himalayas, Quick Kick does have a winter coat on, but his red strap with the throwing stars is on the outside, right, which is a really nice adaptation. I think he's still barefoot, which I'm not going to worry about. Okay, so
should we talk about?
Yeah, yes, whatever you're about to ask, we should talk about it.
Okay, let's get into the opening scene here, because it sort of, you know, it pays off where we've been before and what we're sort of leaning into. So We see the pit still again in progress being being built, which is one of Tim's favorite elements of this book. The constant evolution or continuation of the assembly of the pit, and also we've got some shadows there for Colonel Hawk, which is his kind of idiom, and I don't know if that's the right word, but I'm going to use it. And so, yeah, we've got interesting thing here about Duke, raising the question that a very clever person in the back of the book also mentions, which is all about they've been focusing on Cobra and they're not really exploring the robots and their impact. Hawk says G.I. Joe can have multiple priorities, and very astute, Duke is asking, is there something you haven't told me, sir? And then he sort of answers with two fairly, I think, conflicting ideas here. I'm not going to lie to you, Conrad. There are certain things on a need-to-know basis, but I promise when the time comes, I will debrief you. But for now, don't worry. There is nothing happening with G.I. Joe without your knowledge, which is, I think, a direct lie. I don't think that you can necessarily weasel your way out of that one.
As I've said, it's like every third scene in Arrow when Oliver Queen says to anyone else on the show, like his sister, I will never lie to you. And not only is that a lie, he's about to lie to them in the next scene and later in the episode and also the next episode. It's like, Ollie, I thought you were going to give up being the Arrow. I did. It's, no, you didn't. But I have to save so-and-so. No, you don't. Anyway, I think that when Duke and the rest of the sort of A team learns about Night Force, Duke is going to be upset or offended or hurt. And I don't think that Hawk is going to get to tell Duke in a nice way. I think the two teams are going to bump into each other on Cobra Island or something, at Mars headquarters, and there's going to be some fighting and some yelling, and Duke is going to feel like he was kept in the dark. And then there will be a scene just like this one where Duke is pointing and yelling, and Hawk says, "It's not my job to tell you everything, soldier. That was a need to know." And maybe also, though, there will be Cobra and some alien robots in that scene where Joe Team and Night Force bump into each other, and everyone's upset. And hopefully no one on the Joe Team shoots Night Force, and hopefully no one on Night Force shoots the Joe Team.
We are back at, we sort of move on to outside the, what do we call it? We're in Darklonia, and we're outside the Grenadier labor camp, and it's cool, we're word building.
Hey, look, three-point perspective.
Yeah, on screen, I'm sharing some of the process shots that Marco Fodera shared on his social media. So sort of just a little bit of a fun insight into the level of care, sort of building this out as well. So building out the 3-point perspective, using a set square to build out the detail, and then finishing it off with all of the texture digitally. So yeah, we're getting the world built out with the Grenadier labor camp here, and we do get to see a little bit of the people manning that camp as well. We don't necessarily the uniform isn't necessarily completely recognizable. I think there is a little bit of a paring down and a redesign of this uniform of the prison guards here, but it does definitely have that distinctive shape, giving us the impression that what we're looking here is an Iron Grenadier, or potentially some early proto variant of the Iron Grenadier. So yeah, it's again, it's not necessarily playing into the safe territory of giving us exactly what we know, expect, and are used to, where the Iron Grenadiers are very much initially established by Harmer in his universe, that they're his personal guard. Here it looks like they're being introduced as the guards at this Darklonian prison camp.
Marco Fodera, artist of this issue, who's joining us live for this episode in the comments, says, when Joshua Williamson saw this layout, said me, hell yeah, smiley face. On page 6, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Is that the one with Darklonia or with the... Yeah. Okay.
There are bats in the background. And Mark, I wanted to ask you, since I don't remember, where are we with bats in the storyline? Are they reliable?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think each time we see the bat, the design of them is being slightly tweaked. I'm not too sure to what degree that's, artistic interpretation or just like an evolution of the capabilities of the bat, that they're not a design that's being held still. I mean, they're not a million miles away from the classified bat design, and these ones actually have got a black cover on their front, similar to the classified design for the V1 bat that came out. But I think the last we saw of them was really in the Destro series, where they were actually being employed, and they were sort of poo-pooed by Cobra Commander as being sort of unreliable, that you couldn't put them into battle because their friend and foe capability was not particularly trustworthy. And so I think pretty much since then we've seen them in this kind of status of lined up, as a parade rather than necessarily being deployed. So perhaps I might be misremembering an appearance, but perhaps they've not been deployed by Cobra in anger for a little while, pending them figuring out some of that reliability aspect. But yes, on this we are introduced again, talking to the momentum of this book. It sets something up and then it delivers pretty quickly. That back in the pages, back in the very end of the Destro miniseries, we saw Destro sort of taking his revenge on Darklonia for not being entirely not dependable, and he sort of put this burning mask onto Darklon's face. And I did wonder how long it would take for us to see him again. And here we are with his introduction into the book. And I guess as a significant character that since this has been set up, he has been introduced as the ruler of Darklonia. And as well as the world building, I think we've also got a Darklonian flag being created here for the
can you zoom in on the top of this page? I wonder, artist Marco Fodera, who's joining us live in the comments, and what a thrill it is to have the artist of this issue watching this episode live and chiming in. Thank you, Marco. Says in the script, it says there are normal guards. There's no reference, but they asked me to draw the bat behind Darklon. So that might be all right. So there's our sort of differentiation between the bats that are behind Darklon and these sort of Iron Grenadiers elsewhere in the issue. Mark, can you zoom in on the top of this page so we can get a good look at this logo, which I think I'm seeing the castle. Is this sort of the castle from pages 2 and 3? I mean, it's a seal, right? I feel like I'm seeing. I don't know. I like it. Maybe we'll see patches at conventions on people who are doing cosplay in the future. Marco Fodera says, yep, Ben Abernethy, editor, asked me to create a logo. Then Hasbro saw it and said yes. Cool. All right, what else is there to... Okay, I have a question for you, Mark. How long is Shooter in this prison?
Some time, I think. Okay. So possibly long enough that they should have put her in a prison overalls
in an orange jumpsuit without her belt.
Yeah, because I'm trying to see if I can find the page where it talks about it. But yeah, it's definitely been established that she's been there for a little while. I think maybe when she talks to Beachhead, that she refers to the fact, I'm on a mission. It took me a few months of being locked up here, but I found my opening. So she's just as Beachhead showed his patience, burying himself in the sand in issue number 7, waiting for his opening to attack Hugh Hefner. Here, she is sort of biding her time on this particular mission for many months to get herself in the perfect position to fulfill that mission, which was, as we find out, play Ivana, the person that beats her up, and we also find out Ivana's surname. I believe it's Humpalot.
Page 7. Can you go to page 7? It's got this giant crack punch. Barking Fridge says, Darklon liked Hogan's Heroes as a kid, so all prisoners get to keep their uniforms. All right, here on page 7, it's 7 panels, and what we get in panels 2, 4, and 6 are flashbacks as Jody goes from being young to a little bit older. And in this first flashback, she's talking to her coach or dad, and he's holding a couple gold medals. And she says, wow, you won a gold medal? And he says, and so will you someday, Jody. And the scene is cross-cut. It's intercut, using a film editing term, between these flashbacks and the present day where she's getting beaten up by Ivana. Crack, thock, sock. And then in the second flashback panel, in the first flashback panel, Jody has a big afro. And I don't think this is meant to be the 70s, but this is meant to be the past, right? She's got a different hairstyle. And then in the second flashback, she's got a bandana on. She's doing her Super Patriot cosplay, actually. She's pretending to be Eric Larson's cyborg who crosses over with some Youngblood characters so often. No, I'm kidding. She's got an American flag bandana, and now she's actually holding a sniper rifle and practicing. And her coach or dad says, steady, you got to learn patience. Find the exact right window to hit your target. That line of dialogue is the theme for the whole issue. And Marco Fodera, artist of this very issue, says in the comments right now, in every panel, the father is losing his hair. So in the first flashback panel, he's got a full head of hair. And in the second flashback panel, he's got a receding hairline and thinning hair. And in the third flashback panel, he is bald on top and he looks older. And in that third flashback panel, he says to her, I don't want you to follow my path. I don't want you in the field. And she, wearing some gold medals around her neck, presumably hers and not his, says, it's my choice. And so what this page is setting up is the contrast between getting beaten up by a bully, by this giantess of a character in prison, and also trying to win the approval of this coach, who I think is her dad, but also going her own way, right? He's angry or he's disappointed, right? I don't want you to follow my path. I don't want you to go in the field, which to me says that he's not just an Olympian. He's not just shooting for sport, that he was in the service, right? And in fact, what is he wearing in these first and second flashback panels? It's a little hard to tell, but it might be like green army jacket. So she is suffering this pain of getting this beat down because, like the flashback panel says, she's got to learn patience and find the exact right window to hit her target, right? So she's going to stay in prison for as long as it takes to get her opening where she's got her weapon and she's got a shot to take out her target. And what does she take out her target with when she takes the shot? Where she shoots through a window. So literal and metaphorical window. Oh, right. Very good. Very good. Thank you. Yes. Thank you for pointing that out. I was very good. And the thing that I like G.I. Joe to do every now and then is to re-demonstrate that these characters are the best of the best. So you give them some impossible mission, some impossible odds, and they get out. But I also want not just like a general, like you have to parachute in, and it's like the winds are going to slam you against the building and there's only 3 feet and then you have to like go through the laser beams, and it's all Mission Impossible. But here's like the best shot in the world, and she's on a moving vehicle in the snow, going backwards, and she has a very small window, right? I mean, physical like rectangle to get this bullet placed. And to put a fine point on it, Lady Jaye says, Beachhead says, "What are you doing?" And Shooter says, "I don't like leaving a job unfinished. My original target is still in there." And Lady Jaye says, and it's in italics. It's slightly larger, and it's in italics, and it's slightly bolded. And Lady Jaye, looking back, says, "That is an impossible shot." And maybe if you're a writer and you're the way that I critique art, maybe if you're a writer, you critique dialogue and story, you might say that dialogue is unnecessary. It is hitting it too much on the head. But I really like this, where one of these other experts is saying this not for Beachhead and her own benefit, but for my benefit, for the reader, right? Like, I just need to tell you, Tim, once again, Shooter is the best at this, and no one can do this, so she shouldn't even try. Oh, wait, she got it.
And they're doing a lot in a very shortened, condensed space as well. We weren't getting, 3 panels of her and her father, but you kind of can just, read so much into that. And then it's sort of really reinforced later on, when she's lining up that shot and she's got those medals around her neck of her dad's, or she's put the medal, "That yours? It was my dad. The weight of it helps keep me steady." And again, there's that physical weight. It's, stopping her from waving about, but more than anything, I think sort of an emotional weight there to, her living in his footsteps. And as Greg pointed out here, per her file card, Shooter's father was a marksman instructor at the first US sniper school. And where are we? Let's just read out the whole file code, why not? Pulling the trigger is the next to last thing Jodie Shooter Craig does as an expert marksman. First, she takes days to move into the shooting position, progressing by inches. She remains motionless in the hide, waiting for the target to appear. Once the target is acquired, she uses hard-won skills and esoteric knowledge to judge wind direction and bullet drop before exercising precise breathing control prior to trigger break. The last thing she does is the hardest, getting away. So I can't see anything about her father in that particular card, but I'm sure Greg must be talking about.
Did the classified figures have file cards?
Generally not. So it must have been.
Are they online?
Must have been a different one. What would Greg know about file cards? I'm sure he's paid no attention to file cards.
So,
audience, he's written a book about file cards.
All right. So page 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14. Page 14, the one before you just had on screen, where Lady Jaye says that is an impossible shot. I'm gonna point out my tiny thing of the issue that I wish Skybound could fix later on, which is the sound effect on the second panel when they're getting away in this Jeep. The sound effect is vroom, and it's black, and it's a little distressed, as if sort of the snow is hitting it. Should I hold up mine? If you don't have here it is.
Okay, there we go.
There it is.
Vroom in black.
It sort of reads as like a rolled up chain link fence or some tires in the physical space. It doesn't read. I think I need right now on screen. You've got an image from elsewhere in the issue, and the sound effect is bang, and it's yellow orange. I need something either more obvious, or I need like an outline and a fill. This one just sort of becomes the black all around it. But at the same time, I am going to count this as an appearance of an obscure G.I. Joe vehicle. Mark, do you know the Rhino, the G.I. Joe Rhino? Am I remembering correctly? Is this a Hall of Fame 12-inch Jeep?
Okay, there might be a number of different Rhinos, potentially, because there's the Rhino, which looks a little bit like the Aliens armored personnel carrier thing.
Yes, the answer is yes. The answer is yes. So the Rhino GPV from 1993, which is one of the few 12-inch scale vehicles that Hasbro made. And the front of this Jeep is not exactly the same with the like bumper and the lights stuff, but this to me is not this is not a vamp. This is not the what's the Mark, what's the G.I. Joe vehicle that came out in like 93 that's this color and it fits only 4 guys?
I don't know.
Hold on. The Mudbuster. Okay, this is not the Mudbuster. The closest thing this is the Rhino GPV from the 12-inch line. Good job, Tim. Obscure reference found. Obscure reference acquired. So it's not the same. Doesn't have a gun on the front. Also, folks, I'm happy for this to just be a regular Jeep that is either like a regular U.S. Army Jeep that somehow got into Darklonia, or a regular Jeep that is in Europe in Darklonia. It doesn't literally have to be a G.I. Joe vehicle, but I do like Quick Kick to definitely have his red band over his chest. So I do like any G.I. Joe vehicle to be a G.I. Joe vehicle. Mark, you have any thoughts about Flint and Lady Jaye in this issue? Because they're not the stars, but they're there.
They're there. They're the supporting team. I think that, they're being established as, the backbone, field leaders for this Night Force team, which is, quite a compact team. Essentially, it's Lady Jaye and Flint initially, and they've built out. They're building it out one character at a time with Beachhead, Shooter, and 2B Roadblock. So they come across as just capable, military kind of people. So you're not getting any sort of feeling that they're she's the girl, so they're being cheesecake about it. She's behind the wheel. She's shouting orders. They're just they're the team.
Now that we've had a full issue for Beachhead and Shooter, and I think we're going to get a full issue for Roadblock. I don't know where, but I would like a full issue for Flint and Lady Jaye. And I don't count the little story in the Energon Universe Special 2024 as that. I think that's really what it is, but I want, 15 out of 20 pages. We talked a little bit about the arts, and I wanted to sort of go back to page 7 with these 3 flashback panels of Shooter and her dad. And, in sort of comparing Marco Fodera's artwork to a Tom Reilly and to an Andrea Milana, who have done a lot of work on this title so far in the Energon universe. At the beginning of the episode, I was saying it's sort of sympathetic to Tom Reilly's, but I do think that Reilly has a very different take on inking and detail than Fodera. And what I see here feels much more like traditional adventure style comics. I can't quite pick an inker or a penciler from the last 40 years of comics. But when I look at this face, the dad's face in the first flashback panel and the second flashback panel, it feels like it is both a little simplified, but also sort of inked in a traditional way. Like Tom Reilly is leaving a lot more open for color, and Fodera is spotting more blacks. And look at the folds in Ivana's prison uniform in the first panel. Fodera is doing a lot more like thick and thin, and I don't know if it's a digital brush or a digital pen, but those diagonals sort of at the bottom of her pants under her arm, sort of in the crotch area. This feels like Marvel and DC inking in the 60s and 70s. And I mean that in a good way, because I love that stuff. And to the extent that Reilly and Milana have been drawing in a more open, and this is an imprecise word, but modern style, I am seeing more of an imprecise word, old school approach to shadows and inking and textures and detail in Fodera. Just look at all the texture on those 4 letters for crack. at the top of this page. And this does sort of agree more with like, Herb Trimpe and Don Perlin in the first 10 issues of G.I. Joe, or I like it because I've sort of been wondering what would happen if we saw a little bit of sort of traditional drawing approaches in the very modern Energon Universe aesthetic.
I think some of the aesthetic that we're picking up on is a bit more in the European tradition as well. That there's the likes of, let's call it X111 or 13.
Roman numeral 13?
Roman numerals 13, which was adapted into a film, I think. And that was a very sort of popular European French book. And then, that's not, in isolation. There's a lot of these sort of, adventure books, which are very popular in the European market, which don't really necessarily have that same audience in the American space. And I was sort of flicking on my phone to see, are we close to that? But like sort of, the artist of that, William Vance, Mobius.
Mobius drew the final volume.
And that kind of thing is sort of like those, sort of a lot of the framing, the musculature, and sort of the delving into a lot of detail, particularly in, architecture and sort of some of the details that you might see on a background, like here and the floor and the rug and all of that kind of stuff that you're getting artists who definitely are avoiding the shortcuts in terms of what they're actually sort of launching into to drawing and sort of really grasping the nettle, picking complicated compositions, angles, architectures, backgrounds, etc. There's a lot going on in every single panel of this page, for example. There's a lot of work being done there.
Can you put Marco Fodera's last comment back up on screen? When I was comparing his work to Reilly and Milana, he said, "Yes, Reilly is more, quote, stylish. I like it a lot." And that's a good word, and that's a helpful word. We use the word style a lot, but funny enough, I don't think I ever use the word stylish. And there is a simplification and an exaggeration that Reilly is doing in his work that's not happening here. And there's a slickness to Reilly's work, and Fodera is just going in more with his pen, with his brush digitally, and adding stuff. And this is not good or bad. This is not better or worse. I love the textures and I love the differences. It's just different. Again, I hesitate to compare Fodera's work to American artists because I don't think he's necessarily picking up cues from these two people. But since I read a lot of Marvel and DC, I'm trying to find some sort of reference points. And I think of like how Graham Nolan was drawing Batman in the 90s and early 2000s, or even that Bane Conquest miniseries like 10 years ago, or like Rick Burchett, right, was drawing a lot of Batman stuff in the 2000 aughts. If you like zoom in on Ivana's face here on this page that we're looking at, like Reilly and Milano would just draw that face very differently. There would be a different sort of comparison of thick to thin lines in her hair, the sort of inking on her lip. There's a little bit of a looseness here, and there's also just sort of more grit, right? So, sometimes these words are not helpful because like slick can feel overly complimentary or sort of like hand wavy and salty, like, oh, that pop song is just slick. But if I say like Tom Reilly's drawing is very slick, I mean that as a compliment. And if I say Marco Fodera's work is not slick in the way that Tom Reilly's is, I do not mean that as an insult. I'm saying it's just different textures. And it would be interesting if we could interview Marco Fodera and ask him about his approach, techniques, and artists that he pays attention to.
Yeah, stay tuned for next week's episode, folks.
Should we wrap this up? We should probably talk about the final 3 pages.
I was gonna say, in terms of recapping the mission, Jodie Craig shooter, she's in her cell. She's sort of, doing very cool things with flicking little pebbles at flies and taking them out, sort of demonstrating again her capability. She's being asked to go on a mission to assassinate someone for Darklon. It's not specified who. So there's a little bit of a mystery there, which we may never find out about, or may find out about next issue. And
it's Hawk.
Oh yeah, it could be. That's a good one.
I mean, it's who's the guy with the most secrets here? Who would be giving Shooter orders? It's not Megatron.
So Ivana sort of torturing her. She makes an escape using that lockpick that she's secreted about herself. Maybe she's had that for a while, or maybe she's been able to pick it up in the scuffle that they had. They bump into Beachhead coming out of the darkness. They've got a bit of a shared history, which is helpful in terms of him having confidence in her, but also in terms of shortening the need to him have a lot of exposition explaining who he is, why he's there. She just pivots. You've got new orders, right? Okay, I can get on with that. Let's make our way. And then the element around her taking the impossible shot and having that confidence for you, I think comes less across as like cocky and more across just being very capable and having confidence that she's really good at what she does, which I think is a nice dynamic.
The scene ends with a joke, right?
Yeah.
Shooter's just done this impossible thing, and then she says, "Okay, who are we hunting?" Right? And the joke is that they're hunting her, right? The mission is to get her out of prison.
Yeah, and she's moving.
And she's
moving on to the next thing already.
All right, so in the final 2 pages, Mercer walks in and says, "Destro, we need to get to the next issue so we can have our Dreadnought War storyline. I hear Tom Riley's coming back, and it's going to be bi-weekly. Get your wallets ready." So just as Duke on the first page is saying, "What about the alien robots?" on the second to last page, Mercer is saying, "What about the robots? G.I. Joe has one now." And once again, it's sort of this like Williamson is not rushing, but making a lot of big things happen quickly.
Mm.
And
there's some like immediate consequences to the fact that the Joes have teamed up with this robot. And Mercer has observed that. So they're sort of ratcheting up the stakes. Well, if they've got a robot, what does that mean in terms of how we need to react to it? And of course, in some ways, they don't have a robot yet. They've got a robot there, but only 2 of them know about it. It's not a grand plan from the Joes to team up yet. Although in the pages of Transformers, Flag is kind of recruiting the Transformers. So who knows?
And then the final page ends with a bit of Destro's dialogue continuing from page 19, where he promises us that the Dreadnought War is coming, and we in the final page cut back to, was it Louisiana, where we see the Dreadnoughts fixing up the Dreadnought cycle and the Thunder Machine and a classic car, which I don't think we have seen any connection to with the Dreadnoughts. And now that I've got Mask on the brain, I have to wonder, since I don't know anything about the second and third waves of Mask, and maybe there was like an unproduced fourth wave or something. Is that a Mask car? This does look like one of those Transformers Generation 2 cars from 1994, but I know it's not that. That's not the reference. And also, I think the Dreadnoughts can just have a car.
They've just filled out a stable with just cool-looking cars that wouldn't necessarily be too out of place in a kind of Mad Max type environment.
Right.
They've been using Cobra Commander as a dartboard, and they've got some relatively up-to-date reference for that for that board. And does it put you in mind of a couple of references, such as the cover to G.I. Joe 281,
Right.
where Scarlet and Snake Eyes were taking aim at Cobra Commander?
Right.
Or does it put you in mind of this commission that my brother got from Rod Wiggum?
Well, now that
where the Dreadnoks were throwing a poster, knives and axes at a poster of Cobra Commander.
now that you put it in front of me and ask it in a question that demands a yes or no answer, yes.
I just wanted to point out in the letter page that there was another particularly excellent letter which we can talk about. So here we go. Let's have a read. Yo, Ben and Josh, I am loving the latest arc of G.I. Joe. It is great that the Duke Cobra Commander art tag team of Reilly and Milana has continued on into the main Joe book, and we get to see both artists knocking it out of the park. I hope we continue to see more from Andrea and Milana in the pages of the EU books. Plus, spectacular news to hear Tom Reilly is back on the book with Dreadnought War. Plus, twice monthly. What a gift.
And then Joshua Williamson says, both Andrea and Tom are amazing artists that bring different things to the series. Just amazing work. I love working with them, so I'm glad you like their work too. And now we have Marco joining the team.
I'm enjoying the wider Energon universe, but I do have questions. There seems to be a giant army sporting G.I. Joe logos on their uniforms, led by General Flag in the pages of Transformers, who we previously saw in the Destro series, including Doc. How does this other G.I. Joe team tie in with Duke and Flint's teams? Is there a third G.I. Joe faction?
Keep reading.
And secondly, how do the events of Transformers, including the destruction of major cities, feed back into the events of the Joe book? Given that the team was formed to combat the robot menaces with Duke's vow to destroy them all, there seems to be only a small reference to these events so far. One page of Cobra Commander and Destro watching footage. Can we expect some other response from Duke in this book? Yo Joe from Mark, Talking Joe, Seddon.
And then editor Ben Abernethy says, While Duke and the Joes are aware of what's been happening in Chicago and elsewhere, the reality is G.I. Joe isn't ready to combat giant robots yet and are still largely outgunned by Cobra. And then Joshua Williamson says, we play a long game here, but some of the clues that connect things together will happen soon.
Yeah, there we go.
Congrats on another letter, Mark. Folks, if you want to get as many letters in as Mark, write a letter every month. Or during the Dreadnought War, write a letter every issue. Write a letter twice a month.
Twice a month. Wow.
Fingers crossed that I'm getting a letter in the next issue of Real American Hero, because I wrote one that I thought was great. Now that I've said it out loud, it won't happen. Why did I say it out loud?
It's because you always say they suck. It's your problem. So join us again soon. Coming out this month, we have Void Rivals, October the 22nd. The Dreadnought War starts with the next issue of G.I. Joe, issue number 13, on sale November the 5th. And Transformers continues with issue 26, on sale November the 12th, I believe that is. And who will survive the Dreadnought War? Shaping up to be a very exciting issue. Looking forward to that. Thanks everyone for joining us live. Thanks particularly to Marco for joining in with and giving us some of the comments. We really enjoyed seeing him on this particular issue. He did great work. And if you've been paying attention to the Facebook group and the issues being released there, then you'll know that he will be back with another Night Force story featuring Roadblock joining the world of G.I. Joe before too very long. So we won't have to wait too long at all. It'll be great to see his work in the pages of G.I. Joe once more. Tim, when you're not talking to me about all things G.I. Joe, can you be found in various places?
Yes. YouTube, Atomic Abe, Hub Comics, my store, and A Real American Book, my blog.
Very good. And congrats to the Atomic Abe team with one video hitting the 1 million views mark recently. So congrats. What an accomplishment. Soon you'll be hitting the same levels as Talking Joe, just trailing in behind us at the moment. Is we can't all be up there. If you are new to Talking Joe, Talking Joe, don't look at the numbers. Join us at talkingjoe.co.uk. We can be found in all the places that website points us to: Instagram, Twitter, X, Facebook. Catch up with all of the latest news where we post it onto Facebook. And if you're one of the really, really cool kids, then you can join us on Patreon, patreon.com/talkingjoe. So a big thanks to Richard, Sam, Bill, Rob, Shane, Simon, Chris, Joe, Craig, Frank, Mike, D, Shane V2. This one has had two cybernetic eyes attached to him. Infinite Entertainment, Patrick, Gary V, and Cole Droff. And with all of that said and done, Tim, is there anything else that we need to remind people of before we go?
Yes. Nobody Beats Talking Joe, an international podcast.
Laters.